Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another edition of Islam for Europeans. Sorry, I have not made a video in a while, but please like and subscribe to the channel. Um, I put out a tweet a couple hours ago saying, what would you like me to do my next I4E video on? My good brother Sanji, who's a good response to my post often, his question was, how Muslims can build bridges with the far right, how Islam is part of Western civilization. Great question. Let me address the first part first. So the first question is, how can Muslims build bridges with the far right? I actually don't agree with this concept. I think it's a straw man argument. Um, our detractors are going to use that against us because everyone when they think of when they're first told about Islam for Europeans, they think we're some sort of like hybrid Muslim slash white nationalist group, which is not true. So, but I just want to get into a couple of reasons why that is not something that we can actually do feasibly or something that we even want to do. Let's make a few distinctions. First of all, as we've been saying on this channel for many times now, is that the right, as it's known today in the West, is normally divided up into two basic factions. Right, you have the establishment approved um, pro-liberal, what we can call the establishment right. So these are your figures that you see that have a big social media following, that are approved by establishment governments, and these include Jordan Peterson, Douglas Murray, Tommy Robinson, Candace Owens, Amala. Trying to think of some other ones, but those some of the basic ones. Basically, anyone that has a large following on any social media account, or Daily Wire Plus approved. Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh. So that's your establishment approved establishment, right? And the other faction is the largely deplatformed, I guess you can call it the dissident right. Who tend to be more anti-liberal. They tend to be more Eurosceptic. Their opinions on Islam range from neutral to positive, or maybe slightly negative. But I guess their angle is more racial, or on a national level, whereas the establishment right, I guess their beefs are more specifically about Islam, but any type of anti-liberal traditionalist ideology, right? So if you're talking about the establishment right, um, you know, all of these figures are going to have a set goals in mind, and they are bought and paid by the establishment. They're normally given multi-million-dollar contracts, and they really serve as gatekeepers. And they normally almost never interview Muslims. Now, we did see an exception to that rule when Jordan Peterson was interviewed by Hamza Yusuf and Muhammad Hijab. But then, he quickly turned around after he was let go by U of T to, get this enormous contract with the Daily Wire Plus. In general, trying to ally with the establishment right is not going to get you anywhere. A, because normally they don't interview Muslims in the first place. B is that our politics, being illiberal. Now, they may come to terms with us on certain things, like opposing certain educational agendas. But in general, like their whole spiel or their whole game plan is to get Muslims to accept the Abraham Accords, which it's there's some kind of sinister plan of that, and then on top of that, it's against our religion. We're not going to create like this synthesized perennialist type religion from Islam. um, and like the establishment right figures, they always normally ally themselves with or get their expert opinion on Islam from like a lot of these ex-Muslim types, like in particular Ayan Hirsi Ali, right? So trying to ally with the establishment right, um, they're always, most always, going to have some ulterior motive if they interview Muslims, for any reason, unless the Muslim is so the Muslim the interview is so bad at PR, that it just gives such a bad image of Islam to the West, that they'll actually have them on, like some type of national interview or something, because it gives they're giving Islam an even worse image, or making Islam look even more unpalatable to Westerners. Right. So trying to ally with the establishment right is a no-go. The only figure that has a, I guess, mildly positive view of Islam, or is at least willing to interview Muslims, is Candace Owens, right? She actually interviewed Andrew Tate. But even then, there's consequences in, these people having, positive or warming attitudes towards Islam. And I don't think you can even ally with the dissident right either. Um, Firstly, because they're poisonous to the touch. And what I mean by that is, even associating with them or interviewing them, even reacting to one of their videos, can get you in a lot of hot water, right? So you may lose your job. You may get a call from certain organizations. So that is usually a no-go. Now, I know Daniel Hakikaju interviewed a few of these figures, but Daniel Hakikaju, he's basically got his own independent source of income. He runs his own Islamic Institute. So he can get away with stuff like this. And he didn't outright agree with everything that, these people said. But, like, I would say that in general, just the fact that you're even talking to these people can get you in a lot of hot water. I mean, there are a few exceptions to the rule. People who have kept their nose clean for the most part, like an Edward Dutton or Tyler Hamilton. But yeah, it's not something that I would recommend unless you have like an absolute independent source of income. So that's one reason. Secondly, is that just in general, I mean, what do you mean by ally? Do you mean that you're inviting them to Islam? Because converting to Islam as is just your average Westerner, and staying in any Muslim community for any length of time is an enormous endeavor. Just for someone who is not, just a regular average Joe. I mean, that is enough to deal with already. It's an enormous challenge. Alhamdulillah, Allah makes it easy. Like, I'm not trying to deter people from converting to Islam. But when you're trying to invite, like these well-known, figures on the dissident right to convert to Islam, one, I mean, for them to do it publicly would create an enormous backlash. I mean, even for them to interview another Muslim on their channel, you have to understand. I mean, there are still a lot of people on the far right who consider themselves part of the dissident right, who still have a lot of distaste for Islam, and they'll get a lot of flack just for interviewing. So you're going to lose a lot of your followers. And secondly, if you're going to convert to Islam, like that's going to create a lot of turmoil in their lives. And Islamic institutions and mosques are not really set up for that. So if you're not talking about them getting to convert to Islam, what exactly you're proposing? The other thing is that the dissident right, they have absolutely no political power. I mean, many of them have had their bank accounts frozen. Many of them serve jail time. A lot of them have their social media accounts locked, and they do not hold any type of even municipal political office in any country in the West. Right, so that's across the board: United States, Canada, Germany, UK. I mean, there are maybe some figures within current right-wing political parties who may have watched some Keith Woods video or something like that here or there. But these, if you're going to ally with these people, what do they have? They don't really have much to offer, do they? And lastly, like our way of life and our opinions as Muslims, on various hot button issues, is anathema to what they actually believe. I mean, and Islam for Europeans, we're on thin ice enough as it is. It's quite a tightrope walk to act to be a practicing Muslim to believe in all the tenets of Islam, to keep in mind, the well-being of all of your brothers and sisters in faith, while at the same time wanting your people to convert to Islam. Um, that's going to we're going to have some things that we hold strong to, that we have to hold strong to, that that people on the dissident right don't have any knack, or like filter. Basically, I'll give you a perfect example. I mean, using like racial slurs, that is completely something that a Muslim shouldn't do in the first place. And secondly, it's really bad optics. So anyone who joins organization or is interviewed by me has to have squeaky clean optics. We have to be on our absolute best behavior. And theoretically, getting a bunch of people on the dissident right to convert to Islam, when they haven't really, absorbed all the basics, there's a threat that they may use this as like a grift, to, for whatever political goal they want to achieve. Right. So, I mean, the whole idea of quote unquote, allying with the far right, I think that's a complete misnomer. Um, the only thing that I could think of is, and this is like, maybe decades down the road. And it's a shame I even have to think of these things, or we at Islam for Europeans have to discuss these issues. I mean, this shouldn't be our job. Our job is an advocacy group for European dissident converts. We're an advocacy group for healing relationship between Muslims and Westerners. At the micro level, at the local level, when it comes to converts. We shouldn't have to be like this Islamic think tank. This should be the job of Islamic think tanks, how to solve problems of Muslims living in the West. But the only way that I could think of kind of allying with the right would be, creating a block of conservative Muslim voters who create a large organization. You have to be at least the tens of thousands who have a set, uh, like list of bullet points of things that Muslims are, willing to do, to improve the situation of traditionalist Westerners. For example, opposing certain agendas, that are imposed by the government, or uh, like advocating for, for example, a communitarian approach to the dawah, which would be in line with cultural preservation, in exchange for, the safety and security of Muslims currently living in the West, law-abiding Muslims living in the West, and agreeing to a moratorium on mass immigration, current mass immigration, with some checks and balances for, unification of families and whatnot. And in turn, because you don't want to let Muslims, just, you can't abandon them. I mean, like improving the situation of current refugee camps in the Muslim world, which are living on absolutely shoestring budgets, and we have, our Muslim brothers and sisters literally dying, week by week, living in these horrible conditions of these refugee camps. Taking a chunk of that money you would normally spend on maybe a few refugees, in the UK, and powering an entire refugee camp in the Muslim world for a whole year would save thousands of Muslim lives. That would be something that you could agree to with a right-wing political party. But I mean, no one's even talking at this point. There's absolutely no discourse, between Muslims and Westerners. Like I don't even think, even, we're talking in Canadian terms, that the People's Party of Canada even has a Muslim candidate in one of their ridings, right? So, that is something that would have to occur maybe decades down the road. I don't think that in the political zeitgeist, the political leftist zeitgeist, that is even a possibility, without severe, blowback, from the liberal establishment. And then on top of that, you have to deal with the fact that, the establishment is not only going to be funding left-wing parties, but right-wing parties as well. So, you're going to have competing interests, and any right-wing party that warms to Muslims, by default, they're going to lose a big block of voters from the anti-Islam right. So you're going to have such a large block of Muslim voters to be able to supplant that. So I don't see that happening. I mean, most conservative Muslims don't vote at all. So I don't think that allying with the right is an even feasible option. Nor is it desirable at this point, given the fact that most Islamic institutions are simply not equipped to deal with acclimating your average Westerner who converts to Islam. Right. So that's my thoughts on the subject. Let me know in the chat what you think. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm always up for critique. But that kind of answered the second part of the question, in how I answered how Islam is part of Western civilization. Yeah, I mean, you can look at Andalus. I mean, the majority of Muslims in during the Andalusian period of the Islamic era were native Iberians, were native Spanish and Portuguese. Contrary to popular belief, most of them were not Arabs. The elites were Arabs, but the common people were Spanish and Portuguese. Bosnia is one of the few European majority Muslim countries. There are many hundreds of thousands of converts, Western converts to Islam. So it has been an integral part of the Western civilization. I mean, and then you have I'm not a big fan of the Ottoman Empire, especially the later stages, but they did have an alliance with the Irish. They helped save an entire city from the potato famine. So if you look into history, yes, there were horrible times between the Ottoman Empire, North Africa, and Europeans, but that's not the whole story. I mean, there were some valuable cultural exchanges that did occur. There were an indigenous group of Hungarian Muslims that lived in Hungary, for a period of time. The island of Crete. Crete used to be 50% Muslim, 50% Christian, and the Cretan Muslims, they were indigenously Greek cuisine, Greek dress. They were indistinguishable from the Greek Christians who lived on Crete. There's many examples that we can give. It's just that these examples aren't really prevalent in the public discourse, right? So, and on a final note, I don't think it's some discourse would be possible. I think if you have some figures, milder figures, or more sensible figures on the DR that would be willing to talk to Muslims. I think there's some value in that art in those types of discussions. But it needs to but personally, that's not something that I want to partake in. I mean, like I said, Islam for Europeans we're on a tightrope walk already. We're just trying to survive as European descendant Muslims. And alhamdulillah, I mean, we have a lot of support from non-Muslim Westerners. We have a lot of support from our Muslim brothers and sisters. Thank you so much, for your support for this organization. And this endeavor, to have indigenous European Muslim sub-communities. So I think we're headed in the right direction. But I don't think that quote unquote allying with a quote unquote right is a feasible or desirable option at this point. Okay, so that's my time for the day. I'm Robert from Islam for Europeans. Please like and subscribe, and that's my time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.